The rain had turned Incheon into a mirror of lights. Han Seo-yeon kept her head down, the brim of a cheap cap dripping, one hand gripping a scuffed backpack like it was a lifeline. Gate numbers flickered overhead. She didn't run. Running made security look. She walked like a person who belonged, like a shadow that had learned to breathe. Her phone buzzed with the message she dreaded. Found you. No name, no mercy. She silenced it without reading the rest. A concierge in a dark suit held up a sign near the private concourse. Mr. J. Min. June. The letters were clean. The path beyond them was quieter, warmer, lined with art no one waited to see. Seo-yeon lifted her face just enough to let him notice what he needed to notice. A nod, a rhythm, the entitlement of the rich. He dipped his head and led her past a scanner that hummed approval at all the right people. The jet slept on the tarmac like a silver animal. Rain beaded its skin. Inside, the cabin glowed in soft amber. Cedar, leather, a pianist's hand's worth of polish on everything. At the far end, a man in a charcoal suit looked up from his phone. Jang Min-joon. The billionaire people mistook for ice. He had the face of a promise and the eyes of someone who had learned not to make any. "You're early," he said. Seo-yeon froze at the aisle threshold. Traffic was kind. He gestured at a seat opposite. "Sit." Her pulse argued. Her feet obeyed. She placed the backpack under her legs and folded her hands as if this were an interview and not a mistake large enough to end a life. A flight attendant swept past like a quiet violin, pouring tea that shocked warmth into her fingers. Min-joon watched her without watching reflected in the window, measuring how people breathed when they lied. "What's your name?" She chose a safe ghost. "Han Seo-yeon." A small, almost smile. "Of course it is." The door sealed. Engines gathered themselves. Seoul slipped backward and then down. The cabin softened to a hush that made secrets heavier. He leaned back, attention returning to his screen. "You're not my assistant." There it was, a sentence with a trapdoor underneath. Seo-yeon didn't flinch. "No." "Then why are you on my jet?" The truth was a mouthful of glass. The lie had to taste like water. Wrong gate. "Turbulence ahead," the captain said, polite as a weatherman. The jet rose into a pocket of rough air. The aisle trembled. A crystal clinked a fragile warning. Seo-yeon's backpack slid. She reached. Min-joon reached faster. His hand closed over the strap just as the zipper snagged, and a sliver of metal flashed, the corner of a thin black case tucked inside. Not a laptop, not a book, something precise. His eyes moved first, then his voice. "What is that?" "A metronome," she said. It was almost true. It kept time, just not for music. Thunder stitched the sky. The jet steadied. She dragged the bag back into the shadow under her knees and found her breath where she'd left it. Min-joon studied her like a puzzle whose missing piece had teeth. "Tell me the real reason. I dislike guessing games at altitude." Seo-yeon didn't answer. Silence can be a weapon. It can also be a confession. He looked away, then back, as if the view had changed and brought her with it. "The private gate has facial checks you can't charm. You passed. That means either you're employed by me or by someone who thinks they are." A soft chime. The attendant appeared beside him, voice low. "Sir, we received a message relayed through ops. Anonymous. Urgent. Read it." She hesitated, then obeyed. "Passenger on your jet is the niece of Han Guk-jin." A pause. "Price doubles if delivered alive." Seo-yeon kept her face empty. Inside, the room in her chest where she had stored her uncle's name collapsed. Han Guk-jin. Assassin. Ghostmaker. Family by blood, ruin by design. Dead 3 weeks, and his sins still wrote messages. Min-joon didn't blink. "Alive," he repeated, tasting the word. His gaze shifted to her backpack, to her hands, to the web of nothing she had woven as a disguise. "Is it true?" he asked. She could lie until language broke, or she could bet on something stranger. "Yes." "Why are they after you?" "Insurance," she said. He kept ledgers, not money, names, times, men who believed they could never be found. "He taught me to hide. He also taught me to write." She tapped the pack once. They don't want me. They want the book. Another chime. The attendant again, throat tight. Sir, there's a ground vehicle pacing us on the runway footage. And ATC reports a drone takeoff that wasn't logged vectoring to our departure path. Altitude? He asked, climbing. Seo-yeon unzipped the bag slowly, like opening a wound, and slid the thin case onto her lap. The latches clicked with the intimacy of bad habits. Inside lay a miniature rig, not a weapon, a tool. She looked at Min-joon, met the frost he wore like a suit, and said the only sentence that could keep them alive together. Let me earn my seat. His eyes flicked to the case, to the window, back to her. You work for the people chasing you? I learned from the people chasing me, she said. That's different. What is it? A listener, she said. If the drone is hunting a beacon, I can feed it a prettier song. Min-joon's jaw set, the decision already moving through him. 2 minutes. She knelt in the aisle, fingers finding ports the way a pianist finds notes. The cabin's hum braided with the rig's soft whine. She pulled a cable, clipped a lead. Let the little machine taste the jet's signature and then fake it. A ghost plane turning left when they turned right, descending when they climbed. On the screen, a small inverted V flickered Predator, confused. Min-joon watched the numbers steady. How long until they realize? Long enough to regret underestimating me, she said, and looked up into a face that was not ice anymore, only intent. The jet rolled. Rain became stars. The city became rumor. Seo-yeon snapped the case shut and slid it back under the seat. The rig would keep singing until the next trick was needed. She sat, spine straight, hands folded again like a student in a class taught by fear. Min-joon broke the quiet. You could have taken that book and run to any buyer. I did, she said. They all tried to kill me after they smiled. Why not the police? My uncle taught me many things, she said. Trust wasn't on the list. He considered that, the way a man considers the shape of the blade he might choose. What do you want from me, Han Seo-yeon? Her real name in his mouth felt like a verdict and a beginning. 1 hour, she said, to get clear. To disappear before the men who think they own my life learn where I went. And the ledger? When I'm safe, she said. A copy goes to your lawyer. Untouched. If I lie, you feed it to the men I fear. He didn't smile. He respected the cruelty of the logic. You don't bargain small. I don't know how. His. Thunder moved away. The seatbelt sign blinked relief. The attendant reappeared with 2 cups of tea as if this were only a difficult meeting and not a game that ate people. Min-joon wrapped his hands around the heat and studied the woman who had turned his jet into a question. 1 hour, he said finally, but you don't leave my sight. If anyone boards us at the stop, you stand behind me and you do not speak. She nodded. I can do obedient for 60 minutes. I doubt that, he said, and something like a smile ghosted his mouth. The plane shuddered, not turbulence. A thud against the fuselage, too deliberate to be weather. The attendant's composure cracked. The captain's voice arrived clipped. Sir, we may have a hitchhiker. Thermal signature on the tail. Small, human-sized. Seo-yeon was already unbuckling. They learned faster than I hoped. Min-joon stood, calm swallowing alarm. Cabin secure? For now, came the answer. But if they're cutting into the tail, we lose control surfaces in 5. Seo-yeon met his eyes and held them. Do you still want me quiet? He looked at the ceiling like a man negotiating with a god he didn't believe in. Then he nodded once toward her pack. Earn your seat, he said. She moved. The rig woke up in her hands like a heart remembering its job. Somewhere behind them, on wet aluminum under a disloyal sky, a life clung with a knife and a price. Inside, 2 strangers learned the beginning of a language they would have to speak together or die trying. Cliffhanger cut to black. The thud wasn't weather. It was intent. A red dot crawled across the oval window, tiny and patient, like a question that knew the answer. Han Seo-yeon snapped her case open again. The rig woke with a soft insect hum. Jang Min-joon glanced toward the galley, where a discreet hatch broke the clean line of cedar and leather. The tail access panel, he said. There's a maintenance crawl space. If someone's cutting into it, they'll pop the aft cabin first. Her hands moved faster than her fear. I can spoof the pressure sensors for 3 minutes, maybe 4. After that, the plane will tell on us. 3 minutes is a lot of time when it's the only kind, he said, unbuckling. The attendant returned, white around the mouth. Sir, the captain requests we don masks. He'll descend to 12,000, but we can't shake the signature on the tail. Min-joon took 2 oxygen masks from the bulkhead and tossed one to Seo-yeon. She looped it around her neck like a necklace she didn't have time to wear properly. I'll go aft, she said. You're not going alone, he said. She almost smiled. I thought you liked obedience. I like results, he said, and lifted the hatch. The crawlspace was a narrow throat of metal and cables. The jet banked, gravity lost certainty. They moved in a half-crouch, shoulders brushing pipes that hummed with fuel and speed. At the far end, a rectangle glowed, a panel pried open from the outside, rain slivering in. A hand in a black glove slid through, then an elbow, then a masked face. The intruder hung like a barnacle, one boot hooked to a strap. A line clipped to the tail shivered with the wet, angry wind. He spotted them and didn't waste a syllable. The knife came first, short, utilitarian. The kind that did not waste time being beautiful. He shouldered inside, knife forward. Back, Min-joon said, low. Seo-yeon didn't back. She snatched a metal serving tray from the wall latch where someone had tucked it for turbulence and angled it like a shield. The knife kissed the tray with a high, mean sound. The vibration sang in her wrist. Min-joon stepped into the close, catching the intruder's knife wrist with both hands and turning hard, not theatrical, just efficient. The man's shoulder barked a protest. The blade skittered, bit into the tray, stuck. The intruder drove his knee. Seo-yeon felt impact bark across her hip, swallowed it, and shoved the tray up under his chin. The man's head pinged the bulkhead. Stars that weren't outside flickered in his eyes. He recovered fast, professionals do, and reached for his hip. Gun, Min-joon said. Empty him, she answered. Min-joon hit the tether with his elbow, used the rebound to torque the man sideways, and slammed him into the strut. The jet bucked pockets of rough air like potholes in the sky. The knife squealed free from the tray and clattered down the spine of the tunnel. The intruder's hand found his holster too late. Seo-yeon looped a seatbelt extension around his wrist and yanked, locking the buckle against a support bar with a satisfying click. He spat an oath in a dialect that sounded like money. Min-joon took the opening and drove a palm into the man's sternum short, brutal, not cruel. Breath left the intruder like a debt paid. He sagged against the tether, eyes hot and hateful above the mask. Who sent you? Min-joon asked. Bid was public, the man rasped. Private room, same as yours. Then you know the ledger exists, Seo-yeon said. Tell your client it's not on this plane. The intruder smiled with something that wasn't humor. We never bet on only one horse. A new sound shivered the crawlspace, another magnetized tap along the fuselage. A second hitchhiker. The plane banked harder. The captain's voice arrived strained. Brace in aft. We have an unauthorized latch near the elevator assembly. 2 minutes on my spoof, Seo-yeon said. She looked at Min-joon. We can't fight both here. We need the cabin. Min-joon nodded. He unclipped the intruder's harness and, in the same motion, clipped it to a loop, welded for maintenance, short, strict, inescapable. Tell whoever's out there, he said calmly, that the only exit is through me. They backed out, dragging the serving tray shield and the fallen knife. The crawlspace door shut with a hard, honest sound. In the cabin, the world pretended to be civilized again. Warm light, stitched leather, a piano of whispers in the air vents. It felt obscene and merciful at once. The second intruder came through the aft service door like a roomer given legs slimmer, faster, eyes sharp over a half mask. No knife. Wire in one hand. A small device in the other. EMP, Seo-yeon breathed. Local. He'll pop the cabin grid. The lights blinked once, twice, and died. Emergency strips along the aisle lit like river stones. Darkness made the cabin smaller and choices bigger. He swung the wire. Seo-yeon ducked. It hissed above her hair and ate a lock clean off like an insult. Min-joon stepped in, no hesitation, body between wire and woman, and took the wrap around his forearm. The wire bit his suit, then his skin. He didn't shout. He let pain be a fact and not a flag. Wrapped again to trap the attacker's hand, and yanked. The intruder stumbled forward. Seo-yeon drove the tray into his temple flat, not edge, decisive but kind to the future, and the man folded to one knee. He came up fast because training builds springs into the body. She slid aside. Min-joon pivoted. The wire sang and missed. The EMP device clattered under a seat. "Lights in 30 seconds," the attendant whispered from the galley, working a manual reset with invisible hands. 20 is enough," Min-joon said. The intruder lunged. Min-joon caught the lunge and turned it like a page, using the man's momentum to paste him across a bulkhead. Seo-yeon looped another belt around an armrest and cinched it across the man's waist. He swore, feral. She tightened until the swear turned into breath. The emergency lights bloomed back to life. The cabin exhaled. Somewhere forward, the captain leveled them at 12,000. The storm hesitated, deciding whether to be magnanimous. Min-joon looked down at his forearm. The wire had written a red cuff into him. He rolled his sleeve and made no sound that sounded like sympathy for himself. Seo-yeon tore a linen napkin, wrapped his arm with the ruthless tenderness of someone who has done this before in alleys that didn't have attendants. "You fight like a man who has never had to," she said, knotting the cloth. "I hire professionals," he said. "I also learn from them." "You should hire me," she said, and surprised herself with the truth hidden inside the joke. His eyes found hers, steady and unembarrassed. "Consider this an interview." The first intruder in the crawlspace began to thump a rhythm against the hatch. Not panic, communication. Tap. Tap. Pause. Tap. Code if you cared to listen. Seo-yeon did. "They're not alone in the air," she said. "We have a third vector." As if agreeing, the cockpit chimed. The captain again. "Sir, ATC relayed a second unmanned unit on our new path. We can divert to Busan private, but we'll have company on the ground." "Divert," Min-joon said. "Have ground roll emergency vehicles and say nothing about why." He turned to Seo-yeon. "On the ground, your bidders will sprint. Can you keep us a ghost for 5 more minutes after touchdown?" "If I stand on the tarmac and sing to their teeth," she said. "Yes." He nodded. "Then we dance." Her eyes flicked to his arm. "You should sit." "Later," he said. "Earn your seat." The plane lined up with a strip of black lacquer lit by white pearls. Tires kissed earth, soft as the start of an apology. Reverse thrust growled. The cabin trembled with relief and consequence. Through the oval window, headlights bloomed at the edge of the perimeter. Too many, too eager. Private security trucks moved like chess pieces. One van without markings waited where vans without markings like to wait. The door opened to night air that smelled like rain and jet fuel and choices. Security formed a corridor because men with earpieces love corridors. The captain tried to look like a man whose plane had not just hosted a small war. The two bound intruders watched the door like believers watching a miracle they did not want. "Behind me," Min-joon said. "Yes, Mr. Jang," she said, obedient in tone, not in heart. They stepped onto the stairs. Cameras flashed phones, not press, but light is light, it steals. A figure in a neat coat approached from the van, hands open, smile professional. "Mr. Jang," he said, "we received your unscheduled request. We'd be honored to escort you." Min-joon didn't slow. "Your name?" "Park," the man said. "Operations." "Whose?" Min-joon asked. The smile didn't flinch. "Yours, of course." Seo-yeon angled her face so the wind could talk to her rig. The air was dirty with signals. "He's not ours," she whispered. "He's a subcontractor for a subcontractor who owes a favor to men who don't use names." The van's plate ghosts every 4 seconds. "Time?" Min-joon asked. 2 minutes until their second team comes up from the south fence. Her pulse was steady now, work calling courage to the front of the line. Min-joon's security chief, a woman with hair in a clean knot and eyes that didn't shake, tilted her head half a degree. Confirmation. Sir, do we treat Park as hostile? We treat Park as furniture, Min-joon said. We walk past him. They did. Park kept smiling. Men who sold people for a living always did. At the foot of the stairs, a second van's door slid open. Not Park's. Inside, 2 faces, one steady, one frightened. The frightened one wore a pilot's jacket too big for him. My cousin, the steady one said in Korean, eyes on Min-joon. Your captain called me. I drive fuel. I don't do this. But today, I do this. Min-joon's gaze flicked once to Seo-yeon, questioned without words. She ran the plate, the VIN, the heartbeat of the engine. It stuttered in the honest way older machines do when they want to help but aren't sure how fast the world has become. He's clean, she said, and we have 60 seconds. They climbed in. The door slammed. The van leapt forward like a story trying to get to the good part. Park shouted something that sounded like politeness with a knife in it. Headlights tilted. The first van cut across. The driver cursed in a way that meant skill and shoved the wheel hard. The van slid, corrected, found an alley that did not belong on a map. Behind them, Boots and Pride hit asphalt. Ahead, rain stitched the night to the city. Seo-yeon caught her breath in her hands and looked at Min-joon. He looked back with a gaze that had lost its ice and found something worse and better. Belief. You owe me 50 minutes, he said. I'll pay in 5, she said, and turned the rig toward the dark like a lighthouse with a grudge. Cut to black. The van threaded the service roads like a whispered rumor. Rain turned the perimeter lights into smeared halos. Han Seo-yeon tuned the rig with her thumb, feeding ghost signatures to cameras that believed everything they saw. Left, she told the driver. Skip gate C. Their second team is hungry and bad at pretending. Jang Min-joon sat forward, forearm wrapped in linen, watching the night the way a chess player watches a board before the first move matters. Where? Not a hotel, she said. Hotels keep receipts. Somewhere that forgets. He considered. Yeonhwaedong, above a closed piano bar. It used to be a rehearsal room. He glanced at her hands. It listens better than hotels. They slipped into the old neighborhood without asking permission. The piano bar below slept behind a steel shutter, painted the color of late confessions. Upstairs, the rehearsal room had mirrors clouded by time and a window that collected rain like stamps. Someone had left a coat rack and a chair. Everything else was echo and floor. Seo-yeon peeled off her wet cap and shook rain from her hair. Min-joon found a first aid kit in a closet that looked like it remembered better music. When he reached for her, she hesitated on instinct. Then she let him. He dabbed the thin cut at her temple with a gentleness that argued with his reputation. You should sit, she said. I should, he agreed, not sitting. You fight like a CEO who got tired of paying other people to be brave. He almost smiled. And you fight like a metronome that learned rhythm is a weapon. The room decided to be quiet for them. Rain traced downward on the glass. He taped the bandage, the way careful people tape fragile things. She watched his face up close for the first time without adrenaline, negotiating the price. Neat lines, tired corners, eyes that had learned restraint and were trying to forget it. Why help me? She asked softly. Because you asked, he said, and surprised himself with how simple it sounded. Her phone vibrated once against the wood floor. The number wasn't one you saved, it was one that saved you or didn't. She answered with her breath first. A voice she recognized spoke fast, low, terrified. The fuel cousin, she told Min-joon after. They grabbed him. South Freight Yard, Hangar 3. They want the ledger. 10 minutes. She swallowed a taste of blame. He helped us. This is my debt. It's our debt. Min-joon corrected, already reaching for his jacket. We go together. Your arm. Will come with us, he said. Outside, the city wore wet highways like ribbons. The yard slept with one eye open. Hangar 3 was a block of shadow in a field of quiet machines. A van idled with its lights off, because darkness convinces amateurs they're invisible. A dozen men arranged themselves like punctuation around a sentence no one intended to read aloud. 2 squads, Seo-yeon whispered. One visible, one echo at the east wall. Park's people, plus hired patients. Park, Min-joon said, as if tasting a name to make sure it fit the mouth it deserved. They entered through a side door that had given up on locks. Inside, the air smelled of metal, rope, and the honest sweat of work done without applause. The cousin knelt near a pallet, hands bound, bravely pretending to be less afraid than he was. Park stood with that neat smile, smoothing his coat that didn't need smoothing. "Mr. Jang," Park said, as if this were a reception gone slightly off schedule. "You should have let us escort you earlier." "And miss your hospitality?" Min-joon said. "Impossible." Park's eyes slid to Seo-yeon. "The niece that costs extra." He lifted a phone, angling it so the camera could love her face. "The buyer wishes proof of life." "I brought proof of loyalty," Min-joon said, stepping between the lens and the woman. "The ledger." He lifted his empty left hand. Park's smile trembled, then held. "You won't bluff this." "I don't bluff," Min-joon said. "I price." The men shifted. Guns glanced up like startled birds. Seo-yeon's fingers ghosted over her rig. The yard had a private radio net, the way old buildings have mice inevitable. She seeded it with a rumor. "Police inbound, 3 minutes." The rumor acquired shoes and ran. "Tick-tock," she said quietly. Park gave the cousin a theatrical sigh. "You should have stayed afraid at work," he murmured, and gestured lazily. A guard moved to correct the cousin's courage with a boot. Min-joon stepped. The boot met his shin, not the cousin's ribs. The room inhaled to become violence. Park lifted his hand to release it. Seo-yeon flung a small puck across the concrete. It blinked once and went to work local whiteout. Magnesium bright, 1 second long. Park's men blinked later than she did. That was the difference. The fight wasn't beautiful. It was honest. Close, fast, improvised. Min-joon used the space like an ally, pushing men into each other, into crates, into the bad habit of underestimating him. Seo-yeon moved like someone who had learned to survive in corridors, low, lateral, borrowing balance and giving back regret. A gun fired and found a wall that forgave it. Another fired and found a mirror that did not. She ducked. He covered. They swapped a glance that said more than practice could. Park tried to aim while not getting his coat dirty. Seo-yeon hurled a wrench that had waited a decade for a second life and clipped his wrist. The gun skittered. He looked briefly surprised to be mortal. "Get the boy," Min-joon said. She slid to the cousin, untying knots with hands that didn't shake. "Can you run?" "I can fly if you ask," he said, breathless and brave. "Run then," she said, and pushed him toward a door that believed in exits. Park recovered his hands and his composure. "You think the police rumor buys you a happy ending?" he called, backing toward the east wall where the real squad waited to finish the story. "I think truth travels faster when it's useful," Seo-yeon said, and tapped her rig. Sirens bloomed in the distance at her request. "Sometimes lies behave if you teach them how to sound like the truth." Park's smile finally cracked. He reached for a second gun that had been promised by a tailor. Min-joon saw the tell before the weapon remembered its job. He drove forward, no flourish, just trust in timing, and shouldered Park into a stack that fell like regret. The pistol fired once, into the roof, where nobody kept their heart. Men poured in from the east wall. Before they could finish arranging their malice, the hangar sprinklers woke to the magnesium's wounded pride. Water came down like a hard blessing. Sightlines died. The room became rain. "Stay behind me," Min-joon said, breath ragged. "Beside you," she corrected, and took his right. They moved together, covering, advancing. making small, brave choices. Two men slipped on wet concrete and found belts around their wrists before they remembered gravity. Another tried the wire trick from the plane and learned it doesn't work twice the same way. The cousin reappeared at the door with a flare stick and the heart of a volunteer fireman. He cracked it open like dawn. Red light flooded the rain and gave it a temper. Park's remaining confidence ran out of parking spaces. He looked at Seo-yeon through the water. "Name your price," he said. "Everyone has one." "I do," she said. "It's not money." Park calculated the difference between money and whatever this was, and found he had studied the wrong subject. He dropped the second gun like a bad opinion. Men followed the example, because rain makes even criminals tired. Outside, actual sirens finally arrived to honor the rumor she'd rented. Min-joon's security chief walked in with real papers and a face that made everyone behave. Park tried to become furniture. It didn't work. In the sudden quiet, the sprinklers hissed and then stopped. Water ticked from things that had been dry an hour ago. The cousin hugged air like it was a person. The driver crossed himself badly and meant it. Seo-yeon turned to Min-joon. His sleeve was darker where the wire had bitten. Blood politely reminded him it existed. She reached for his arm and he let her. Her hands were steady, practical, warm. "You should sit," she said again. He sat this time. She knelt, close enough to see the part of his gaze that had stopped being frost. The world continued around them, but smaller, like a polite chorus. "Why didn't you run?" he asked. "I tried that. Everyone wanted me dead after they smiled." She tied the bandage firm. "You were rude." It felt safer. He laughed, a short, surprised sound. "Stay," he said, before pride could edit the word. "Until you don't need to. I can put a wall around your name, and a door only you can open." "And the ledger?" she asked. "When you're safe, my lawyer gets a copy. The rest goes to people who can't be bought." He watched her decide whether she believed in such people. "If they don't exist," he added, "I will fund their invention." The rain outside softened. The hangar smelled like wet iron and choices made. She sat back on her heels, hair dripping. Eyes tired in the way courage makes them tired. "I don't do belonging," she said. "It gets people hurt." "I don't do promises I can't keep," he answered. "But I can keep this one. If you stay, you won't be alone in the consequences." Silence turned warm. The cousin coughed on purpose to remind the universe. It had witnesses. Min-joon didn't look away. "Earlier," he said, voice low, "you asked why I helped you. That was the wrong question. Why do I want you to stay? Because somewhere between the runway and this rain, I forgot how to be afraid of being seen. Thanks for watching." Her mouth softened into something like surrender. "1 hour," she said, echoing the plane. "That was the deal." "Take 2, he said. "Greedy," she murmured, and leaned in. It wasn't a dramatic kiss. It was the kind that chooses life slow, certain, rain-sweet, witnessed by a broken sprinkler and a relieved cousin. When they parted, the room felt less like a trap and more like a beginning that hadn't learned how to be complicated yet. Outside, the police discovered paperwork. Inside, Park discovered handcuffs. The world pretended to return to normal. Later, in the quiet rehearsal room above the piano bar, she laid the thin black case on the floor between them and opened it. Not a bomb, not a book. A drive in a foam cradle and a journal with damp pages and names that thought they were immortal. "Copy for your lawyer," she said, tapping the drive. "Journal for me. I'm not done being angry." "Anger is allowed," he said. "We'll underline it in the calendar." She smiled, unexpected and honest. "You're learning my language. I'm hiring the best teacher," he said. The rain eased to a rumor. In the mirror, 2 people looked like survivors, pretending to be ordinary. She reached for the coat rack and found an umbrella that had been waiting years to be useful. He took it without asking to lead. She didn't mind following for once. On the stairs, she stopped him with a hand at his sleeve. "It wasn't an accident," she said. "Boarding your jet." "I know," he said. "You earn your seats." "And you?" she asked. "I'm still earning mine," he said. They stepped into the street. The umbrella made a small roof. The city glowed like a secret being kind for a change. He held it higher so more of it belonged to her. She looked up. That small, honest smile returning to the place it had been waiting to return to. "It's only rain," he said. "Not tonight," she answered. "Tonight, it's permission." They walked. Neon puddles negotiated with stars. Somewhere behind them, a piano in a shuttered bar remembered a song. The night wrote the last line and did not underline it, because some things don't need help to be remembered. A week after the hangar, the city pretended to be normal again. Rain fell only as much as it had to. The lights held their breath only as long as they needed. In the rehearsal room above the shuttered piano bar, Han Seo-yeon sat cross-legged on the floor, journal open, drive warm in her palm. Jang Min-joon stood at the window, watching the rain like a man who had finally learned the language the sky uses when it wants to be kind. "We hand off the copy this afternoon," he said. "My lawyer's waiting on the sky bridge straight to the notary. No soft corridors to ambush." So-yeon underlined another row. Her uncle's handwriting was tidy the way threats practiced to be. Dates, places, amounts, initials. She stopped at a code that kept repeating JHW. "Not a company, not a product. This isn't a vendor," she murmured. "It's a person." "Who?" She turned the page so the light caught ink that had hardened like scars. "Jang Hyun-woo." Min-joon didn't answer for a second that felt like a decision. "My uncle," he said at last. His voice didn't break. It just shifted down half a key. "He bankrolled the early group. He retired when I took the chair." "He didn't retire," she said, tapping the initials that returned and returned like a song that refused to end. "He bought sins." The honesty rearranged the room. Outside, rain moved its weight from the glass to the road. Inside, Min-joon stared at the drive like a door that could only be opened once. "If this is true," he said quietly, "then saving you isn't the point. Burning his name is." "Don't burn yourself," she said, gentle. "Burn the floor he's standing on." Cries. The sky bridge hung between two glass towers like a vein at altitude. At the far end, Miss Kwan, his attorney, stacked documents with the precision of someone who hates surprises. Chief Yoon, hair in a clean knot and eyes that never shook, stood half a step behind. Min-joon, an access key clipped to her badge. "Route is sterile," Yoon said. "Private lift, empty sky bridge, cameras are mine." "Park?" Seo-yeon asked. "In a cell," Yoon said curtly. "But men like him don't show up alone." The lift purred like a polite secret. The door opened on pale green walls, wood panels, lights humble in front of glass and weather. Kwan rose with a field smile warm enough to grease a deal, cold enough to keep distance from fires. "The drive," she said. "I'll scan and duplicate. One to escrow, one to the prosecutor, one to international insurance. After this, no one kills the story by themselves." So-yeon passed it over. Her hand didn't shake. Gloves, an enclosure, a small green LED. The progress bar crawled like drizzle, slow, stubborn. The ceiling lights flickered once. "Substation brownout," Yoon murmured into her earpiece. "We're good." The lights flickered again. Not a brownout. A roll-down shutter on the bridge descended to 3/4 enough to compress space, not enough to trap, enough to announce intent. The lift gave a single chime that didn't belong to good news. Miss Kwan looked over hesitant, then too calm. "Don't panic," she said, perfectly flat. Seo-yeon glanced at the glass. Reflections are sometimes better witnesses than bodies. In it directly behind them, a silver-haired man stood with a cane he didn't need, and a smile that helped no one. "Hyun-woo," Min-joon said, "no honorifics." His uncle stepped out of the shadow like a man who waits until rooms pronounce his name. "Juna," he said softly, wearing a childhood suffix on an adult mouth. "You brought an expensive guest." Miss Kwan didn't look surprised. That was the first bite of the twist. Seo-yeon caught the angle how the attorney tilted the enclosure 3 degrees, not for cable placement but to break Yoon's camera line. "Stop," Seo-yeon said. "Just loud enough for the right ears." Yoon raised a hand. "Miss Kwan?" The lawyer held Hyun-woo's gaze for a fraction too long. It translated as a paragraph in the language of people paid to close the lid. "You've been bought," Yoon said. "Ice." "I've been paid," Kwon said. "Not the same thing." Rain thickened on the glass like words that finally found courage. Hyun-woo tapped the cane once, twice, a tiny rhythm that made other people's muscles want to obey. "Son," he told a nephew who wasn't, "I built something for you to stand on. You don't need to know what the floor is made of." "Now I know," Min-joon said. "Floors don't just carry weight. They reflect it." Hyun-woo smiled, the short, stale tea smile. "Good boy. Pretty sentences. Now be practical. Hand over the drive. I'll tidy the journal." The girl disappears with respect. He turned to Seo-yeon. "Better than disappearing without it, My uncle taught me the difference," she said, "between fear and submission." "Your uncle," Hyun-woo said pleasantly, "isn't dead." The room shrank. The word found every wall and bounced back. Seo-yeon stood straighter than her bones. "Lie." "He deferred his obligations," Hyun-woo said, as if quoting a calendar. "Men like him don't retire. They change contracts, including yours." The progress bar hit 98%. Miss Kwon glanced at the number that refused to learn manners. 99%. Hyun-woo lifted his chin toward Yoon without looking at her. "Turn the clock off." Yoon didn't move. She inhaled and tasted the metal smell of polished malice. "I work for this one," she said, nodding at Min-joon. "Not for the past that borrows our surname." "You think you're a hero because you choose the youngest?" Hyun-woo asked, amused. "No," Yoon said. "I'm a professional because I know the difference between a host and a parasite. 100%. A clean line. A tiny trigger at the edge lit up the Deadman mirror Seo-yeon had wired. Miss Kwon saw an icon she didn't recognize and finally looked afraid. "What is that?" "If anyone cuts the network, the drive mirrors to 3 addresses you can't phone," Seo-yeon said. "If no one cuts anything, it still ships at noon." "You put a bomb in a file?" Hyun-woo asked, entertained. "Not a bomb," she said. "A clock." He lifted the cane. 2 men with quiet shoes slid from a service door that shouldn't have worked. They moved with expensive patience. Yoon raised a palm. "Because even good people believe sequence is kinder than chaos." "Mr. Jang," Yoon said low, "I'll take right. You take left." She, a nod at Seo-yeon. "Protect the channel." Seo-yeon was already on her phone. One icon blinked HY4, a little code her uncle had taught her once, a thing she had hated then and would use now to betray the teacher, a handshake to a contact labeled Hyacinth. "If you're alive," she said without looking up, "come yourself. Don't send dogs." The reply arrived 2 seconds later, not a voice. A still from a dockside CCTV they had scraped a week ago. A silhouette with a scar she knew too well to have invented. "I'm alive, kid." Under it, not on their side. Twist number 2 stood neatly at altitude. Han Guk-jin was alive, and not with Hyun-woo. Anger and longing collided and fell, bleeding without wounds. "He's baiting you," Min-joon said even. "Or he's trying to fix what can't be fixed." "Both can be true," she said. Hyun-woo's men moved. Yoon moved first, clean, short, efficient, pinning one to the glass, rotating the wrist like closing a book, stripping the gun before intent finished being born. Min-joon cut left, no flourish, no doubt catching a forearm, pressing a shoulder, borrowing weight, finishing a sentence that wasn't his. Miss Kwon reached for the enclosure's power. Seo-yeon tapped twice, and a timer roared onto Kwon's phone, big white numbers. 0 hours, 1 minutes. "What did you do?" Kwon choked. "Gave you a chance to be a person," Seo-yeon said. "If you pull the plug, it ships now. If you don't touch it, it ships at noon with metadata that says you were in the room when it left. That's rough on people who prefer to punch with other people's hands." Yoon cuffed 2 men who had finished aspiring. Min-joon turned to his uncle. "Hyun-woo, see," he said, polite without bowing. "It ends here." "Nothing ends," Hyun-woo said, pepper calm. "You'll run out of love when the money runs out." That line only works on people who never learned any other currency, Min-joon said. 0 hours and 9 seconds. Miss Kwan closed and opened her eyes. The way people do when they finally choose a sin they can sleep beside. She took her hand away from the enclosure. I'm stepping back. Smart, Yoon said. 0 hours and 3 seconds. Hyun-woo lifted his cane like a ruler. You chose to burn, Juna, he whispered. Then let it be warm, Min-joon said. 0 hours. The enclosure chimed once, small and sure. Far servers that didn't know they were saving love received mirrors. Escrow locked. A digital notary nailed the seal. Rain applauded softly against the glass. Hyun-woo lowered the cane not because he was beaten. Men like him don't admit that, but because arithmetic. You destroyed the floor you stand on. I'm building a new one, Min-joon said. Out of material that doesn't eat other people's children. Hyun-woo tilted his head, studying Seo-yeon. And you, niece of a man who refuses to die, do you think this is freedom? Not freedom, she said. A choice. He walked away with the rhythm of a man, still convinced he owns the ending. Miss Kwan straightened her files like someone who understood she had just bought her name back at retail. Yoon raised the shutter, reset access. Called 2 names from her team who always arrived exactly when the narrative needed a breath. Outside, the weather softened. Inside, the quiet warmed. He's alive, Seo-yeon said finally, staring at a photo that aged 5 years and 2 seconds. My uncle, if he wants you safe, Min-joon said, he'll stop teaching the world the wrong rescue. If he wants to bait you, he'll come when we're alone. Then we don't be alone, she said. We walk too, he said. They descended to a street polished with permission. At the door, an umbrella waited like a good habit. He raised it a little higher so more of the roof belonged to her. She tucked her phone away, her uncle's face, a timer at 0, a list of names that weren't immortal anymore into a pocket that didn't invite the past. It's only rain, she said. Not tonight, he answered, soft. Tonight, it's a clock choosing sides. They walked. Neon puddles negotiated with stars. Somewhere high, faceless servers glowed, then rested. Somewhere else, a man who wouldn't die considered an appointment. Here, 2 people moved under one small roof, redefining family when a surname wasn't enough. And for the first time since that plane left the ground, nothing chased them, only a future waiting, politely, with a door no longer locked from the outside.